In the last video, we went over horizontal stretches, and in this video, we'll be talking about translations. Once again, there are two types of translations. One is obviously a vertical, and what that means, translation just means movement, right? And so a vertical translation just means you're moving things up or down. And obviously the second type is horizontal, which means you're moving things left or right. All right, so first we're going to start with vertical translations. And once again, remember, translation just simply means a movement. You're not really stretching or reflecting or anything. You're simply moving things. So first let's go over vertical translations. Vertical translations. So as the name suggests, it just means we're moving things vertically, which means it affects the outputs. So it affects the outputs. In other words, the y values, but not the inputs. The inputs, which are the x values. So let's just do sort of a quick example. And so say, for example, I just have an xy, and I pick a random point. So let's say I pick 1, 2. Okay, so it's just a coordinate, and it's 1, 2. Okay, and if I decide to move this vertically, let's say I decided to move this 1 unit up vertically, this new point, so if you, let me just change that to yellow. So obviously this is 1 and that is 2. And if I decide to move this up vertically, this new point would still remain at x value of 1, but the y value would now be 3. So this new coordinate right here would be 3. And so this is 1, 3. And I've vertically translated this coordinate 1, 2 up by 1 unit. We say 1 unit because we don't know what the units are, so we simply just refer to the vague term unit. 2, 1, 3. So in other words, the y values have increased, but the x values remain intact. Let's take a look at the functional notation for this. So let's say, for example, I say y equals f of x plus 1, right? And so what that means is, if you look at the x's, there's no change in the x's. The y's, on the other hand, well, they're not being multiplied by anything because there's no number, there's no stretch, so there's no number in front of f of x. But what it means is all the y values are being pushed up by 1, so increased by 1 unit. So the proper way to write this, the proper description for this, is a vertical translation up by 1 unit. And if this was a negative number, then we would say a vertical translation down by 1 unit. But for this example, we're just going to say up. So let's demonstrate this with an example. So once again, I have this function. Let me just simply get the xy table here. So that's just the list of coordinates. So here's xy of this original function. So once again, it's 1, 2, 2, 4, and 4, 1. So 1, 2, 2, 4, and 4, 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this original transformation. So let's say y equals f of x. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to transform it to y equals f of x plus 1. So the first thing we should do is write a geometric description. So let's write a geometric description, and what it is, it's simply a vertical translation up by 1 unit, which means it affects all the y's but not the x's. So let's see how this xy table will be transformed. So here's xy. So all the, sorry, that's a mistake. Let's just change that. So here's the xy table. As we said, all the x's remain intact. Nothing affects the x's, so x remains like that. But all the y's are now increased by 1. So we say it's y plus 1. So the x's remain intact, so that still remains 1, 2, 4. But the y's, on the other hand, just increase by 1. So this 2 becomes 3, this 4 becomes 5, and that 1 becomes 2. And now let's just plot it. So our first coordinate is 1, 3. So 1, 3, that's simply right there. Second one is 2, 5. 2, 5 is right there. And our last one is 4, 2. 4, 2 is right there. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to connect the dots. There we go, right there. There we go, right there. And if you observe, nothing really has changed in the terms of the shape of the thing. It's all just moved up. Oh, by the way, I should probably just write this. The green one is f of x plus 1. So the green one is f of x plus 1, and the yellow is f of x. So as you can observe, once again, as I was saying, is that the transformation has simply just moved everything up by 1 unit, but the shape of it has not changed whatsoever. So that's vertical translations. In the next video, we're going to go over horizontal translations. See you then.